What's going on, guys? I'm back. Another week of the Cricket World Cup, and it means another update. Where we left off, England had just beaten West Indies at the Rose Bowl, and I know last week we were talking a lot about the rain and how that was dampening the World Cup, but a lot has happened. The weather's slightly brightened up. The games have got either very, very tight, or we've seen some big scores from some of the leading teams. I'm going to get right into it. First and foremost, we had Sri Lanka against Australia and South Africa against Afghanistan. Both of those games going the way that we expected to go. Afghanistan have had so much trouble this World Cup, and we know it's there. We know that they are you might say, the whipping boys of the group, but they would have hoped to have performed a little bit better by that stage. If not necessarily getting a win, which I'm sure they looked on course or the hope to have done. Internal differences between the coach and some of their leading players. One of the players, I think it was Shazad, got sent home because he was unfit, and it has really disrupted the team in this World Cup, and it means that they are yet to win a game. They were battered by South Africa by 9 wickets, setting them only 125 to win. Australia, on the other hand, they played Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, a big team in terms of their history and their name, but how they're performing, they don't look like it. They are a shadow of their former self. None other than Lattice Malinga. You can see as quality a bowler as he has been, and even still is in some cases, he hasn't got the same powers that he used to have, and that really epitomizes the whole Sri Lanka team. As a result, they were unable to chase down Australia's 334, and in that game we got what was then the joint highest score of the World Cup. Aaron Finch 153, joining Jason Roy on that same score. Jason Roy, incidentally, who we haven't actually seen since that game against West Indies. He was injured in the field and he didn't play in the next game, which we'll go on to, and he's unlikely to play against Sri Lanka as well. They may be getting him ready for the Australia game and of course the knockout rounds. Then we had the big game, the massive game. Now the rankings don't suggest that this is a tight matchup. World Cup history doesn't suggest that, but we know the rivalry between these two sides. I was questioned on Twitter whether this is does this rank as a top 5 sporting rivalry, and you have to say so. You have to say that when it comes to, well, yes, it's everything in terms of on the field, off the field, politically, socially, and the fact that it's two neighbouring countries, the countries that used to be one. This is up there with the greatest sporting rivalries, and that is, of course, India versus Pakistan, Pakistan versus India, whichever way you want to look at it. But the game itself went the way of, well, the previous 6 World Cup games, the way of India. So it's 7-0 as far as they're concerned. We know they're still smarting from that Champions Trophy defeat the last time they met in a 50-over tournament. And in that same tournament, India beat Pakistan in the first game or early on in the tournament. And then when they met in the final, Pakistan dealt them. They handed them a beating, an actual beating. And this game was somewhat similar to that final. But it's about who wins it in the end. But India, they have the bragging rights as of now. They beat them comfortably. 336 they set Pakistan. There was they came off a rain at one stage and the Duckworth Lewis got involved, but 212 was all Pakistan could reach. In that game, incidentally, we had a century from Rohit Sharma, who is showing some great form so far in this World Cup, and I think it's very ominous going forward. The kind of form that him, Shekhar Dhawan, who we get on to, and Virat Kohli in the top of the innings are showing for India. And of course the bowlers, Jasprit Bumrah, etc. Pakistan, that result really set them back. They've already lost to West Indies. Prior to that, they lost to, I think it was Australia as well. And yeah, they lost to Australia, and losing to India, it meant really going forward, every game was a must-win if they're going to have any chance of going forward. I want to take some time out to speak about Bangladesh, because you have to applaud Bangladesh. You have to. The way that their cricket has developed in the last few years, I don't think many people would have thought that they'll be in a position they are now. A position where, realistically, going into the World Cup, a semi-final place was not beyond them. I, for one, actually backed them to get to the semi-finals. They've already beaten South Africa. They pushed New Zealand very, very close. Probably should have won the game. Put up a good run chase, a decent run chase, should I say, against England, but the score was just that too much ahead of them. And they met West Indies, my beloved West Indies, out in Taunton, Somerset. Of course, I was there, surrounded by the Bangladesh fans. They dominated, probably I would say 9% of the crowd there. It was that partisan. And West Indies put into bat. Most teams like chasing these days. The ground very, very small. And you have to say Bangladesh did very, very well. It was a below par score, subpar performance from West Indies, if we're going to be completely honest. 320 was never going to be enough on that pitch. But it didn't seem like the batsmen realised that Bangladesh bowled well. But they didn't bowl that well. It wasn't like it was impossible. There was a lot of balls that West Indies were just unable to put away for boundaries. A lot of ones that should have been twos. A lot of dead bat batting. Shea Hope made 96, and I don't think he ever got above a strike rate of 80. We saw later on in the tournament, David Warner made a big score, and he was kind of batting at 80 strike rate, and then he had to up it because, well, runs needed to be got. At no stage did Shea Hope really look like he wanted to really up the strike rate. And it's innings like that. Now, I'm not taking away from the fact that he got the 96 runs, but this is ODI cricket. You have to play the situation. You're batting first. You know your strengths as a team is in chasing, so you're going to have to do something that goes against your strengths and defend the total. Give the bowlers a good total. Now, 320 is not a bad total, but it's not a match-winning total. For me, if you get 350, you say, bowlers, do your job now. 320, they'll have to bowl very well to win that. As it was, they didn't bowl well. As a matter of fact, they bowled terribly. That is one of the worst performances from West Indies I've ever seen. And I've seen some bad ones. As I said, I'm not disrespecting Bangladesh. They are a very, very good side. And they've improved dramatically. Confidence in their batting. Confidence in their chasing. But they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that was West Indies. From ball one, I was going to say to ball 300, but the innings was ended with 50 balls to spare. So from ball one to ball 250, it was just short and wide. Short and wide. Short and wide. And they were pulled from pillar to post. 4s and 6s galore. Saqib Al Hasan, somewhat of a hero in Bangladesh, the #1 all-rounder, and I can see why he's a #1 all-rounder. That innings was amazing. Litton Das, his support innings, amazing. Our bowling was disgustingly bad, and the captaincy even worse. At what point do you say to the bowlers, well, you know what? This plan A we had of bowling short ain't working. Let's go to plan B. There was no plan B. You could argue there wasn't even no plan A. You would just run up and do what you want and let's see what happens. Then in the field, a lot needs to be questioned. There was a few chances to half chances that we just didn't take. The one that we took was a brilliant run out from Sheldon Cottrell off his own bowling. And that opened up an end, an opportunity to really squeeze Bangladesh, and we just never did it. Sakib Al Hasan, I think he was pretty much, you could say dropped or missed on, I think it was about 40 or so, hooked it into the deep, and between the keeper running back and the fine leg, they both left it to each other, and the chance wasn't taken. And he really made us suffer. Because of that, for me, that was a must-win game for both sides. Therefore, for me, we're out. Because realistically, we need to win every game from here on in. And that means New Zealand, who are unbeaten, India, then of course Sri Lanka, then Afghanistan. Now you could say the fixtures are slightly against us in the sense that the easier games are last, so you don't get the points on the board, you might say, like New Zealand did. They had Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh in their first three. Then they had India rained off. Then the South Africa, which again we're going to get onto that, who aren't playing very well. Whereas we had Pakistan, Australia, a rained off South Africa game, and then England. So you're in a position where now the pressure's on to win every game. Whereas New Zealand aren't in that same predicament. They can lose a couple games and still have a chance to go through. But the reality is everyone has to play everyone once. The fixtures are what they are. You have to beat the opposition in front of you. And we've had an ample opportunity to get another win on the board. And we ain't done it. So that's only our own fault. The players unfit. Lackluster. And frankly, just not good enough. But Bangladesh, well done. Very, very, very good run chase. 322 they were chasing. And they won it with 7 wickets in hand, 51 balls to spare. Then we had England versus Afghanistan. What a display of hitting by Owen Morgan. What did he have? 142? 148, sorry. Joe Root 88, and Bairstow 90. But that innings from Owen Morgan, 17 sixes and only 4 fours. That is amazing. And he's not known as a player for big hitting. We know he's got all the shots in the game. We know he can basically hit 360, reverse sweeps, scoops, chips over the infield. He can hit 6, of course. But he even said he didn't know he had that kind of game in him. And we definitely didn't. But it was carnage. But then a lot goes down to fielding because he was dropped on like 21. You catch that. I'm not saying it's a different game because you back England to beat Afghanistan 10 times out of 10, let alone 9. But catches with matches, fielding is so important. And the teams that are right now top of the standings, you would say are the best fielding sides, the fittest sides, the one who are saving singles in the deep, taking catches, and then running 2 when most teams only run 1, or running 3 when most teams only run 2. Those are the teams that are top of the standings, and for good reason. But England, dangerous, 397, and I think it's at about, where was it? Actually, as a matter of fact, I think it was right at the beginning of the game. I said 400. England should get 400, and they nearly did. They needed a 4 off the last ball, only went for a single. Moeen Ali, brilliant innings, 30 odd off maybe single figure deliveries or so. And Afghanistan were just pummeled everywhere. Their leading bowler, Rashid Khan, the premier spinner in limited overs cricket actually in the world, he got punished. 101 off 9 overs. He didn't even finish his spell. Worst, what was it, 110? Worst figures by a wrist spinner in the World Cup. I think maybe even the worst figures of any bowler in the World Cup. But it was carnage, and they won that game very, very comfortably by 150 runs in the end. Then we had the game of the tournament, without a shadow of a doubt. South Africa versus New Zealand. South Africa, must-win game. They're very similar predicament to West Indies. New Zealand, as I said, unbeaten at that stage, and a win you would say would put them with one foot in the semi-finals. And South Africa put into bat 241 for 6. It was a bit painful, slow going until really at the end. You thought they could have taken a bit more impetus. I think they were just thinking, let's get a score, something we can try and defend, as opposed to try and go too hard, too fast, and end up with nothing. Amla scored a 50. Van der Dussen scored 67 not out. Is really his hitting at the end that gave them somewhat of a respectable score on a difficult pitch over in, was it Edgbaston, I believe it was. And New Zealand made hard work of chasing down. South Africa bowled well, yes, but for me, they were striking the ball much cleaner than South Africa, much more confident in their strokes, and it seemed very, very comfortable. And then a flurry of wickets, and they were on the back foot. They had a Guptill hit wicket, strangled down the leg side, caught and bowled. It was all happening. Inside edge onto pad and lobbing up. It was very, very nervy from New Zealand, and in reality, they actually got lucky in the end. Kane Williamson, who scored a century, hit a 6 off in the last over to win the game. He should have been out. He edged it behind off Imran Tahir's last ball of his spell, and there was a small spike on ultra edge. Umpire didn't give it. Imran Tahir appealed. There was nothing from the wicketkeeper, Quinton de Kock, and they didn't go up for the review. And for me, big error, game-changing error. If Williamson goes there, for me, South Africa win the game, and it's open. Another spot is now open for the semi-finals, but they didn't. Some said chokers, bottlers. South Africa done it again. The game was there at that moment for them to claim, and they failed to do so. Finally, we had the Tigers again, Bangladesh, playing Australia in Nottingham. Australia won the toss, chose to bat, put some runs on the board. Bangladesh don't mind chasing too much, but it had to restrict for me Australia to about 350 maximum. 381, the second highest score of the World Cup, second highest scoring World Cup. Sorry, the third highest score actually. England had the 2 highest. Third highest in World Cup history. David Warner, as I said, he started off a bit, not pedestrian, but not too fast. And he went on to make the highest score of the World Cup so far, 166. Aaron Finch, 53. Usman Khawaja, 89. But the 400 was there again. The 400 was there. And Khawaja ran out Glenn Maxwell, who was on something like 32 of 9 balls. 6s were raining in Nottingham until he got run out, and then the scoring got pulled back, 381. And they made a lot of that chase, Bangladesh. I'm not going to say they nearly got there. I don't think anyone really believed they did it, but they were going to do it. Tamim Iqbal, 62. Sakib Al Hassan scored another 40. I think he might still be top scorer in the tournament so far. And a century from Mustapha Rahim, the wicketkeeper. A valiant chase by Bangladesh, but just falling short in the end. The semi-final lineup looks like it's pretty much secure. I think each team in the top 4, probably one more win, will secure their spot. It's never over till it's over, but it looks pretty much set in stone what we're going to see in the semi-finals. Going forward, we've got the game against England versus Sri Lanka this Friday, today, and then tomorrow, another must-win game. This really is going to be the nail in the coffin for West Indies. If they don't win, it's West Indies versus New Zealand over in Manchester. Of course, I'm going to be there, as I have been, gluttonous for punishment following the West Indies around the country this World Cup. Make sure you leave your comments below. Let me know all your thoughts on the World Cup so far and who at this stage are your team